What is good, guys? It's Charles on Team COG, and I'm coming at you guys here with my updated Infernoble Knight deck profile post ban list. And losing OSS does suck, guys, quite a bit. And you've got to understand, like, it was bound to happen, man. As soon as the Azamina stuff came in, like, OSS bridging all this stuff was like, it was just destined to happen. And it's like, you guys just understand when, like, this type of stuff come out, we've seen it time and time again, this stuff usually eventually gets addressed. However, I'm not going to lie, I was really hoping they'd follow, like, the OCG route and like limit wanted and limit witch. But I think you either had to do the limiting of witch and wanted or ban OSS, and it does suck. It does lower the deck's like explosiveness and its ability to play through disruption and everything. But with that happening, it made the entire community kind of move away from the whole wanted engine and explore like other options that existed. And yeah, so this is the list that I am currently playing right now, and it's inspired by a 5-0 list. There's a few cards like I didn't have access to. I'll show up a video or a picture up here, the 5-0 list. And potentially, if I remember to, I'll put a link down in the description or down in the comments. I'll pin a comment to where you can go watch his 5-0 list. He was playing Super Poly, and I couldn't have access to those cards, so I didn't find it. So I decided to play like Gearfried and stuff, even though this list didn't play it. But we'll go into it. I'll break it down, and I'll talk about it and stuff. And yeah, please remember, if you guys enjoy this type of content, hit that subscribe button, ding that notification bell. And if you guys really want to help to support the channel directly, hit that join button, become knighted, get awesome perks and rewards, become, like, you just help, get the channel going and everything like that. So a huge shout out to like you guys and just everything. So this is my list. It's 40 cards. I will talk about like some changes and like some things that you can potentially play. One thing I want to say about the FlameSwordsman engine is we all know that there's not really like a super strong one card combo. One FlameSwordsman equals one disruption, which in terms of like other one card starters we had in the past, such as like the Wanted was like a one card combo with the Azamina stuff. And the Battle Boxer Uppercutter, which I still enjoy Uppercutter. I just believe like this engine plays better into hand traps, even though it's like a higher engine count, and it potentially like can brick you a little bit, if that makes sense. But like Flame Swordsman, this card right here just trades with hand traps a lot better than the Uppercutter does. But anyway, that's like a whole total discussion and total video for a different time, because like I want to potentially go down another route and play like the Boxer stuff along with like some different types of engines and everything like that. But anyway, I start out with, guys, 40 card list. We're on to 3 of the Fighting Flame Swordsman. This card is literally the best normal summon in the deck. This card really trades very well with hand traps because it has an effect on summon and then an effect when it gets into the graveyard. So like your opponent has to like spend 2 hand traps on this just to stop it from recurring you, pretty much like disruptions, which is really cool. If Konami actually ever supports like this deck, which theoretically they should, right? Like I think it's how every OCG thing goes. Like they'll eventually give a support card for the Flame Swordsman. Eventually, just hopefully we're not forgot about, like, certain other archetypes and stuff like that. We should potentially get something to help support this. It'd be kind of cool if it bridged into Infernobles, but that's like kind of like what we lost with the Wanted package, is that the Wanted package bridged into Infernobles by getting access to Ricky Ardetto, but this engine sadly does not. But anyway, I'm moving on to triple, the Fighting Flame Sword. This card is literally 3 more copies of the Fighting Flame Swordsman, so technically this is more consistent than playing like the Boxer stuff, because the Boxer stuff you only have Rhoda plus like the 3 Uppercutter, whereas this you have Rhoda plus 6 copies of the Fighting Flame Swordsman. And if you open Fighting Flame Swordsman, this card can just get you like any of the other Fighting Flame cards, which isn't like too bad. Most normally off of the Swordsman, you're going for the Trap now. But so these are the cards like you want to see. This card has a lot of cool effects. Like it protects from targeting. It allows you to target a card on the field and destroy it. It's just really cool. 1 fusion, 1 realm, and then 1 salamandra. These are, so like I think this goes like in the list here of cards you want to see, and then these are cards like you're okay with seeing, but they're not the best cards you want to see. You could arguably get away from playing the fusion here, but this card does so good going second. Like one of the strongest things this deck has going for it is being able to solve like 2 to 3 cards through Charles, through SP, and then like battle phase Gearfried, and then and then like the ultimate Flame Swordsman can attack, doubling its attack, making it just lethal. So I kind of really like the fusion. It's another equip spell that can like be live and everything like that. And Charles can equip it too. The Salamandra, you never want to open it, but it's okay if you do, because you can equip it from the hand, and that's okay. Swords Realm is a really cool extender, and it's also a cool card to open or search before you normal summon, because either you're normal summoning your Flame Swordsman or Ogier. Flame Swordsman protects your normal summon from being interacted with. And then the 2 traps is Salamandra Chain and Flame Sword Dance. Both these cards are searchable Book of Moons, which means your inboard is like layered. Your inboard is, I believe, normally the Charles along with either like SP along with 2 Book of Moons or something along those lines. I haven't like really like ironed out the for sure lines for sure, but I'm pretty sure that's what you can get to with just Flame Swordsman plus any access to a level 1 tuner. gets you to Charles plus double Mookamoon and a Gearfried or SP, which is like really crazy off of 2 cards because you double your combo economy, and it's layered to where if your opponent hits you with Drop, Blitz, or Dark Ruler, you still have 2 Mookamoons to be able to do stuff. This card right here allows you to also, in the graveyard, banish it to fusion summon, and that's really cool because you get the Fighting Flame Swordsman out, then you can equip it with something, and then it becomes a quick effect pop. The Flame Swords Dance, this card's very interesting because it's like, it allows you to tribute a face-down monster to your opponent, or just a face-down, it says a face-down monster, and then summon a Fighting Flame Swordsman fusion monster, or that mentions it from the extra deck. But like, it has to be your monster because like, it's just the game mechanics. It should have like allowed you to book a moon something and then tribute whatever you book a moon. Anyway, these cards are pretty cool, but as you can see, it's a very extensive engine. It's technically a 11 card engine here, which is pretty a lot to consider when, if you were thinking about playing the Battle Boxers, you literally could play 3-1, and then if you wanted to play the XYZ stuff with it, you have a 6 card engine versus a 10 card engine. But the crazy thing about this is it's very consistent because of the factor that you get to play 3 Fighting Flame Swordsman and 3 Fighting Flame Sword, which searches it, which makes it, I think, a little bit better than like the Boxer stuff. But moving on to the Infernoble stuff, I am rocking the 3 Renault. I don't know if you have to play 3. I know in like a previous list I was playing like 1, but I think the name of the game now, without having the wanted stuff to be able to get access, you need to open Renault and the Flame Swordsman, or essentially any way to Angelica. And one of the good things about the Boxers was one uppercutter bridged you into your Infernoble Knights, which is really cool, which is a strong pull to play that engine versus this. But it was more susceptible to hand traps. So you wanted to max out on your Renault. You potentially could cut it down. I saw some other Fighting Flame Swords lists cutting this down to 2 and potentially down to 1. But at that point, I don't think you're really playing Infernoble Knights. You're playing Fighting Flame Swordsman, and I wanted to play Infernoble Knights more so, be like the main, either be the main engine or the, like, you know, on par with the Flame Swordsman stuff. But Renault's like the best extender in the deck. If it's the best extender, you should play 3 of it. Moving on to like the level 4s, Ogier, Oliver, Turpin, and Malgus. So these are pretty standard. Ogier is definitely the second. So let's go ahead and show them phenomenal mention here of Gearfried real quick. So in the Flame Swordsman list that are not playing, some of them are cutting Gearfried because it's a horrible card to see when going second, and that's very true. This card sucks going second. Every time I say it sucks, it literally wins me games, which is kind of insane. But I've won more games off of Gearfried than I've lost, but that doesn't mean that it's still true. Going second, drawing Gearfried in your opening hand is bad. But what I wanted to do is, so like I said, some Flame Swordsman lists, especially the 5-0 list, wasn't playing Gearfried. But without having Gearfried, it made Ogier be like no different almost than playing like any of the other normal summons. And I wanted Ogier to still be like the second best normal summon. Whereas if you don't open access to your Fighting Flame Swordsman, you can still have more consistent ways to get to Ogier. You can still potentially open Ogier plus Renault, which at least gets you to Gearfried and Charles, which is still a consistent 2-card combo the deck has to beat hand traps and to at least establish a board. Not to mention if you open Gearfried or something like that, or if you hard open like any of these other cards, like they're just layered disruptions for sure. One Rhoda. Rhoda is like a card that could bounce between both engines here because it can either search your missing piece of your Infernobles or it can add your Fighting Flame Swordsman. So Rhoda is part of like engine requirement. 3 Heritage of the Chalice, 1 Museum, 1 Almus, and 1 Durandal. This felt wrong because I think Museum is such a crazy card, but technically speaking, you're playing 3 copies of it. So, like, you get access through your combo with an Angelica. So, like, it does make sense to play this at 1. It just feels not right since the card is not a hard once per turn. And if you'll notice, if you're playing 1, your likelihood of you making 2 Charleses don't come up as often, but that's not entirely true. You're able to, like, if you're able to search out, like, Turpin through your combo sequence and stuff like that due to your opening, you can make a second Charles pretty easy. But this is it for, like, these cards. There's a world where you could go to, like, a second Museum, but I don't think 3 is the way anymore. And 3, actually, I take that back. 3 might be the way simply because we've lost the Witch and stuff like that. But, this card's only as good as what I can search. And currently right now, Almus and Durandal are like the only cards worthwhile searching. And if you're not playing Gearfried, there is absolutely no reason to be playing the Almus, honestly. But I like the ability for Almus to have... I like a lot of, like, utility in a way. But this is it. This is it for the engine. So here's the non-engine. And I actually watched a video by Joshua Smith who was talking about playing against Ryzel and Malice and how where potentially the format's returning to its balance after the Age of Fire has passed, that we might be able to go back to playing literally decks that can play, or we can play, like 9 to 12 non-engine and be okay. With that in mind, though, I'll go ahead and talk about like my non-engine. This is probably the like most flexible part of the deck, really. This is where you have the most flexible space to do stuff, is the non-engine. But to go ahead and start us out here, we're on to Triple Ash Blossom. You got to have this to counter the pure Mulcharmies. and also to like just bash is good, right? That mostly right now, honestly, is just here to hit the Charmies. Droplets is something I haven't played in this deck for a while, but Droplets is a phenomenal card going second into Ryzeal, and it's okay going into Malice. It allows you accumulate a lot of like free cards on the field, whether it be your mostly it's your equips, but like the trap cards from the FlameSwordsman, the Museum, the FlameSwords Realm. You have a lot of cards to be able to send, and also going second, being able to like normal summon out your FlameSwordsman, trigger his effect, and then they try to pop it with Detonator, and you just chain Droplets, so you're going to proc the effect off of the FlameSwordsman and solve the Detonator is a really cool thing, especially triple Imperm. The Droplets is flexible. You could definitely play something else. You could play Effect Failures, but it's just like Droplets serves as a board breaker, very similar to Impermanence. Like I would rather rip Droplets off the top going second than drop Effect Failure. Same with Impermanence. These cards are good because they check Detonator and they're settable cards when you're going first, which is really cool. We're on to Impulse, and I'm actually not a huge fan of Impulse. So Impulse feels terrible against the Ryzeal matchup, but against Malice, it's okay. And this is where, like, truly, I know I went ahead and said that you could potentially play, like, Effect Veiler over this card, over Droplets, but I think truly if you were going to play any other hand trap, this is the place you'd put it. Like, our deck can play it. It's okay against, like, other matchups, but against, like, I want a card that's more broad against all my matchups versus, like, if I play against a Ryzeal, this card ain't doing nothing. Whereas if it's Effect Veiler, at least it could be doing something. It would be, like, at least I could hit Duo Drive. But Impulse is only good to me against the Malice when they try to flip the traps and summon, or they're trying to reborn stuff from the graveyard using Splash Mage and stuff like that, or trying to summon back from the banish. You can Impulse. So it's definitely like very matchup dependent. And maybe you could argue and say that if I believe this deck has a worse matchup against Malice than it does Ryzeal. So maybe like you should keep Impulse in because like you're more inclined to like beat Ryzeal, because I think Ryzeal's boards they put up is like more oppressive than like what Ryzeal does. So like having the Impulse to be able to have like a very powerful hand trap to like check them and stuff like that could be the way to go. All we know is just test. For the last 3 cards, we're on to double talents and 1 call by. This will always probably be in any combo deck I play. These cards are just super strong and super good. That's about it. The deck list is 40 cards. Arguably, you could potentially cut either Dominus, or you could cut Forbidden, or you could bump the card up to like the count up to 43 cards, and you could potentially play 1-for-1 Ricciardetto, because if you guys notice, Ricciardetto wasn't in the Infernoble lineup anymore, and like 1 Flint Lady to like consistently get to like the 2-card combos where it's like if you open Heritage of Chalice or Museum, you can still get access to your FlameSwordsman, because if you open access with like Ricciardetto or Flint Lady, you have like these like 2-card combos to still be able to put out the ultimate FlameSwordsman and stuff like that. That's what I'm thinking on doing, and maybe excuse me guys, maybe move into 43 cards is not like a terrible idea, because then once you get to 43, that will kind of like lower the chances of seeing the cards like you don't want to see, like essentially these cards. Again, you don't mind seeing these three are okay to see, but really like lower the consistency of seeing like all these together by playing those. And it just 1-for-1 is such a punishing card, and Ricciardetto is like decent because it does have the ability to like extend, and it's like solid follow-up. Especially I found in this deck, like, you could arguably not play the Ogier or the Gearfried, excuse me. You could not play the Gearfried, because this, if you start out with your Fighting Flame Swordsman plus like your way to like Renault or like even Oliver, essentially, as long as you start out with these 2 and you eat a Nib, like you're still okay. Like you can beat Nib without having access to Gearfried, but it's just Gearfried applies so much pressure going second, and like going first, man. Like I said, like earlier in the video, is like you want to have like a searchable like good normal summon, and so you play like the 6 Flame Swordsman, but then you have all these cards that search out Ogier. You have Heritage of Chalice. Essentially, you have more ways. You have 3 more ways to get to Ogier than you do like the Fighting Flame Swordsman. So like I wanted the Ogier to be able to do something, because if you have access to Ogier, you have access to Renault. So then Ogier and Renault at least gets you to something. But I don't know. Like I said, further testing will be able to tell the truth. But we'll move on to the extra deck, guys. There's a few changes in the extra deck that I would probably make moving forward, and I'll talk about those here. But here we go. I still play double Charles, 1 Roland, 1 Angelica, and 1 Charles the Emperor, and this is Charles the Great. You could potentially cut down on just play 1-1-1, but with you, I don't like this for a few reasons. Because there is times that you can potentially make a second Charles, and double Charles is really strong. Even with just playing the 1 Museum, that's still like possible to do. And for follow-up and stuff like that, Having a second Charles is really good, especially if the first one gets outed. I don't like Heshtir Unicorn ripping my extra deck, and there's already enough targets for it to rip. So like they're probably going to go after one of these cards if they're smart. But then like hypothetically, if they hit one of these and not one of these, or if you only play one of these, you know what I mean? Like there's just too many one-of cards. Like they go and get, or like I said, if they're smart, they'll hit this right here, and it'll be, you know, shut us off. But again, I like the two. I do play the one Link Spider, one Anima, one Little Knight, one Hida, one Promethean Flame Princess. You could potentially cut Link Spider, which is kind of crazy for me to say, especially like I said earlier, that this deck plays like through into Nib pretty well now, so with the Fighting Flame Sword stuff. So like by the time like you're able to turn the token into Link Spider, you're already warrior locked, so there's almost no need for it, because at the moments you're going to get nibbed, you're going to be warrior locked. If you just open outside of Ogier, if you open any of the standard nobles like Turpin, Malgus, or anything like that, and those are your like normal summons, like what I'm saying is by the time you get to your 5th summon, you're going to have already moved a card up from the spell and trap card zone without controlling Charles, so you're warrior locked. So there's almost no point for it. And I'd honestly play a Link 2, whether it be Cross Sheep, because I think there's some lines with Cross Sheep under when you just open like Extender that's not Renault. It's like open at FlameSwords plus like Extenders. You're able to essentially get to a Cross Sheep, and Cross Sheep gets you to Promethean. And then essentially the other card you need to play, which I'll talk about, there's another cuttable card to play, which is Dempsey. You can play like another target to turn Promethean and stuff into, whether it be Amblo Whale or it be like the Fighting Flame Swordsman. The Link 2 is entirely up to you, but I think going into Amblo Whale might be okay. So because in your inboard is Flame Swordsman with a pop, maybe a Book of Moon, and then you have Promethean Princess with Amblo Whale, and I think that's pretty good. But anyway, moving on to the XYZs, one Dempsey and one Baguska. Not really much can be said. Baguska is like literally plan B, and you can still make this consistently if you open like Flame Swordsman plus essentially if you get hit with Shifter or Droll or something like that. It's Shifter's a little bit okay, but Droll's pretty rough, especially if you resolve the Flame Swordsman to grab a card and they hit you with Droll. It's kind of like, well, you better hard open it. But essentially, if you open Flame Swordsman plus any way to Heritage or Museum or anything like that, you get to Turpin, and then you can special summon out Turpin and then overlay for Baguska in the plan B situation. Dempsey has not come up really that well, because if you can make Dempsey, whatever you're searching out, it's like really like turn 3 or turn like way past that, because you have no way to extend. If you're making Dempsey, you're taking 2 level 4s to make Dempsey to search maybe like Renault, and then if you're searching Renault, you got to be able to equip something from the graveyard and move it forward and special summon out Renault. And it's just, it doesn't come up enough. So this right here, if I was moving forward, which this list will be played in the recent weeks POVs coming out, I'd probably cut these for essentially a Link 2 and the, I can't think of the name, a Link 2 and like a Amblo Whale essentially. So that way you get more benefit out of like opening non-tuner lines. But yeah, that is it for these guys, the XYZs, Links, and the Synchros. Moving on to the fusions. The only 3 to play is the Fighting Flame Dragon, the Ultimate Flame Swordsman, and the Flame Swordsman himself. Not really much can be said here. Outside of like, we know what these do. This is like the second boss monster of the deck. Thank goodness his artwork is at least pretty cool. But yeah, that is it for the extra deck 15 cards. It's just like I said, this engine takes a lot to play. You take 3 extra deck spots, and then you take, you know, like 10 main deck spots. Maybe you can get away with 9, but for the most part, I enjoy it. I've like had a lot of good testing with it. You guys have watched some of my testing POVs. So like I said, this week we'll be taking it to locals and playing it in our tournament, and hopefully we'll be able to record and report back to you guys with another profile here in a little bit. But anyway, this is it for the video. Any comments or questions, go ahead and like, you know, ask down below. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you guys had a Merry Christmas, and stay safe, stay healthy. This is Charles from Team COG, signing out.